Last week, I called Chris Pinto of Adullam Films. I told him that I made a big mistake regarding Simonides and his claim to have made what we call the Sinaiticus. I didn't give Constantine Simonides a fair trial. Hi, I'm David Daniels from Chick Publications. Now, fair isn't a term that appears anywhere in the U.S. Constitution or Bill of Rights. However, the Sixth Amendment gives the person accused of a crime the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. So, it's supposed to happen quickly and publicly by people who are willing to be swayed only by the evidence. Those accused have to be told the accusation against them, have to be confronted with witnesses against them, have to be able to get witnesses in their favor, and have to have assistance or counsel for their defense. That summed up is what we call a fair trial. And nobody, including me, seems to have done that with Simonides. Even in the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 states that a person is considered innocent until proven guilty. That's called presumption of innocence. But with Simonides, we made an exception. We presumed his guilt. Why would anyone presume a man's guilt? Because of what Simonides said he did. He said he created the Codex Sinaiticus himself. Why is that so important? Because another famous man, Constantine Tischendorf, said that Sinaiticus was the oldest and best Bible in history, and that was huge. Because as a result, people copied the Sinaiticus and removed thousands of words and changed other words compared to the traditional text of the Bible. They literally rewrote and republished a different Bible. Then they acted as if it was the new and improved version based upon the oldest and best manuscripts. And after that, we got so many Bible versions flooding the world, each differing from the other and taking out, adding to, or changing even more words based on whatever scrap of papyrus they found in a desert cave, cemetery, or monastery. It was a free-for-all after that. The Bible has never been the same. And we have seen the result. Because in the new versions, the verses that now contradict each other make Jesus to be a liar, a sinner, not part of the Godhead, salvation to be based partly on works, not fully on faith in what Jesus did to shed his blood in payment for our sins, and to make people question doctrines on heaven, hell, angels, devils, all sorts of Bible history, including Jesus' physical resurrection and ascension into heaven. And check the surveys for yourself. That's not coming from the people who just trust and read the English Bible based on the traditional text, the King James Bible. That's coming from the people who read the modern versions. This is important. I'm not standing at the beginning of a movement saying this is what could happen. No, I'm standing at the end part of history saying this is what already happened and why it happened. I'm only going to tell you what already happened. Turning to the modern Bibles and reading what they said led to this. There is no doubt it destroyed faith in millions worldwide. And it started with trusting Constantine Tischendorf over Constantine Simonides. Last year, I spent some time showing, step by step, how Tischendorf lied about what happened when he first saw the Sinaiticus, how he lied when he declared what color it was, how he lied about his conversations with the librarian at St. Catherine's Monastery, how he lied about the baskets being used to put manuscripts to be burned, how he lied about animal skins being burned, how he lied over and over again, even to his own family. And I stated how Simonides was a known forger, counterfeiter, liar, etc. Here's the problem. Unlike with Tischendorf, at no time did I point out a single instance of Simonides telling a lie with proof that it was a lie. That's because I didn't catch him in a lie. Not one, but I still presumed him guilty. Do you know why? Because I believe the stories told about Simonides. They were well written. As Chris Pinto knows, I wrote him when his movie Terrorism on the Week came out. I believed what FHA Scrivener wrote against Simonides. Frederick Henry Ambrose Scrivener, after all, said he wrote the definitive Greek text underlining the King James New Testament. Scrivener was a friend of the received text. That meant he was a good guy, right? But he was also a textual critic. He himself doubted a number of verses belonged in the Bible. And in the end, he was chosen by Westcott and Hort to be on the committee that created the English Revised Version of 1881. But his criticism was so well written. In fact, amazingly, it seemed everybody's analysis of Simonides was written to show him to be a liar and a fraud, a forger, and to top it off, an evil genius. It was a very convincing story. Except for one thing. It had no evidence. Nobody put forth any evidence. It was one person's testimony against another. Think about this. It's really strange. The more I read Simonides' testimony, the more I read it, the more I noticed that he gave dates, places, names, including people they could check with for themselves. And Simonides told where they could be contacted. But I was too dead set on the fact, however unproven, that Simonides was a liar. I was working night and day, asked my wife, to understand the story and make sense of history. Yet even I didn't allow Simonides a fair trial. Until lately. As I showed you, the statements written by the monk Kallinikos told the truth as far as I could verify. The events Kallinikos, the monk, said he witnessed really happened. He was one of the only ones who talked about changing the color of the remaining parts of the Sinaiticus. After Tischendorf grabbed a number of sheets in 1844, took them to Saxony, and called them the Codex Frederico Augustinus, CFA. Those sheets, as you may remember, were and still are white. The rest of the Sinaiticus is darkened. So Kallinikos was right about events. Then I started reading Simonides' testimony with new eyes. When you don't believe someone's testimony, you can gloss over everything they tell you. Why would you even care about the details? If you don't believe a word of it, then nothing they say can make you change your mind. But when you find out that many things they say happen to line up with provable facts, then suddenly every detail becomes important. So I took a different approach in the last month. I decided to make a timeline and to see if I could fit what Simonides and Kallinikos wrote on that timeline without contradicting historical facts and each other. Let me just summarize what I found. I'll go into more detail on the timeline in the next video in the series. Simonides told the truth about the Isle of Symi, his mom, and his Uncle Benedict. Really great Uncle Benedict, his mom's uncle. So his mom's side of the family from the tiny island north of Rhodes. He also told the truth about the monastery where he was baptized and had intimate knowledge of its names. I was amazed to find out almost every location in Greece seems to have had 2 or 3 different names. Simonides told about the historically verifiable academy or college of Cydonia, where his uncle, named Basileus and Bessarion, taught for 35 years. He had a certain theory about the Septuagint and the Church Fathers. We'll get into that later. So he retired after 35 years. Then he went, as the Simians know, to become a monk on Mount Athos, starting at Asphigmenos Monastery on the Aegean side of Athos. That's where he took the name of Benedict. Then he was allowed access to a bunch of manuscripts, both that he purchased and kept safe there, that he as a scholar could study to his heart's content. Simonides told the truth about the Greek Revolution against Muslim Ottoman rule and how the fighting forced his uncle off Mount Athos to a safer place. He told the truth about his uncle eventually going to the tiny island of Poros and about the specific monastery there and who it was dedicated to. This matched up with the history of the first ruler of independent Greece, Ioannis Capodistrias, who came to that island with ambassadors from England, France, and Russia to map out the new state of Greece. Capodistrias appointed Benedict the head of a small college at the monastery, starting with 12 or 15 students. This matched up as well with Simian history. Of Benedict petitioning Capodistrias to add the Isle of Symi to the islands belonging to Greece, to release them from the Muslim Ottoman rule. This also matched up with the history of the Isle of Poros island and the monastery. Simonides was right. And his biographer, Charles Stewart, was wrong about the date when Simonides was born. There were 2 brothers, Constantine and his 4-year younger brother, Photius. And of course, Simonides' testimony matched up with his birth certificate that he had to carry around with him. That's good enough for starters. I haven't even started into things like the real year his great-uncle Benedict uncovered the hidden manuscripts and why that's important. How and where Simonides learned his skills in writing. Why Benedict wanted a printing press from the Tsar and not from Athens. Who Simonides met at Mount Athos and why it matters. The church leaders Simonides showed the Sinaiticus to. How many times Sinaiticus really left Simonides' hands. What Simonides did when he got the Sinaiticus back. The famous man Simonides got to help him publish his Barnabas book. Where Simonides got his advanced education. Who financially backed Simonides and the influential people they knew when Sinaiticus started to be tampered with. Why it was always the Russians people were trying to get the Sinaiticus to. And more. Again, why is all this important? And why would you even want to learn all this? Because the entire Bible was changed after Tischendorf convinced modern text critics and paleographers that Sinaiticus was one of the oldest and best Bible manuscripts in history. That earthquake shook every modern Bible and emboldened people to continue changing the Bible right up to the New King James in the present day. And just one man, a Greek, stood up and said, Sinaiticus is not ancient, but modern. I created it as a project for my uncle to give to the Tsar of Russia, to get in return a printing press, to print up the many manuscripts found and kept on Mount Athos. That man was Constantine Simonides. After piles of intensive checking of facts, I am forced to make a change. I can no longer presume Simonides to be a liar, guilty until proven innocent. I am now forced, by the evidence, to treat him as I should have in the first place, innocent until proven guilty. And I never could have gotten to this point if I hadn't have made that timeline. That's enough introduction for now. Until next time, God bless you and have a wonderful day.